Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey.
The beginning of anything. Chapter 1, right? Where it all starts. We've talked about a lot of beginnings here on the 6M. The first movie in a string of films. Movies that build entire universes. Yes, we've talked about Iron Man, the first Iron Man. Yes, we've talked about the first X-Men. Yes, we've talked about the original Superman, Christopher Reeve in 78. Yes, we've talked about Batman 89. And again, we're talking about movies that spawned endless, I don't want to say endless, but multiple sequels, entire universes. Yes, we've done the Star Wars universe. And any other number of things that we've covered here on the show through the years that, again, it's just proof positive of everything's got to start somewhere, right? Everything's got to have a beginning. Today, what we're talking about, can't believe it took us this long to talk about this particular movie. But you want to talk about a beginning? I'm telling you right now, without the movie we're talking about today, what you see over the past 10, 15 years with comic book movies, I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened, but buddy, let me tell you, this movie is hugely important. And the man starring in this film has recently managed to come back and to tie off maybe a loose end, and maybe we'll see him again. But you guessed it. You know what we're doing. We're talking about Blade. We're talking about the man playing the character here today too. And we're doing this episode for a couple of different reasons, which we'll get to shortly. But first, let's say this. Blade is a 1998 American superhero film directed by Stephen Norrington and written by David S. Goyer. Man, we talked about that guy a lot here. Based on the Marvel Comics character Blade, it is the first installment of the Blade franchise. The film stars Wesley Snipes as the titular character, with a host of other actors, great actors by the way, doing their thing in this movie. And Blade is a Dampier, which is a different kind of term if you don't know what that is. A mythical creature that is the result of a union between a vampire and a human. In Balkan folklore, actually. I don't know if they actually refer to him as that in this film. They just call him the Daywalker. Essentially what you have is a human with vampire strengths, but not their weaknesses, who fight against vampires. This film was released in the United States on August 21st, 1998, as we said, and was a commercial success, grossing $70 million at the U.S. box office and $60.2 million worldwide. And if you can do your math, kids, that's a total box office of $131.2 million. The budget was only $45 million. What do you think about that? 120 minutes, again, August 21st, 1998. Released, of course, by New Line Cinema, distributed by New Line Cinema. And that is your lowdown on Blade. So, Phil, we have talked about this. We've danced around it. We've mentioned it in previous episodes. For whatever reason, we've never tackled it. This guy just had, I keep wanting to use the word comeback, and that's not the right word. But this guy just popped up again in the Deadpool Wolverine flick, as we know. We talked about that here already. What do you think about this film, Phil? How long has it been since you've seen it last?
It's been a while, but it's one of those movies that stays in public consciousness. One of the most successful comic book movies, easily a part of that time period that made comic book movies lucrative. It's definitely one of those movies where when you see the New Line Cinema logo pop up, you think of that movie. Every time the New Line Cinema logo pops up, I think of either Friday, House Party, Ninja Turtles, Blade, or Rush Hour.
I'm with you on that, especially the Turtle movie, man. We got to do that here on the show sometime.
Also, Mortal Kombat. Another one.
Mortal Kombat, yeah. Man, New Line Cinema was a hoss in its day, wasn't it? A lot of stuff coming out of that production company, man.
Man, that was one of those logos that popped up that knew that it was just part of the movie going experience where you knew you were in for a treat most of the times when you saw that logo come up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this as we get going. Does this hold up for you after all these years?
I think it holds up very well. I think when you're explaining like some of the mythology, Daywalker just sounds so much cooler.
Yeah.
Just, it just sounds way more cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, just stuff like the opening scene of him walking through that club and like the blood shower and him fighting off all the vampires in that club. I think that is a timeless scene. I think that it is aged like fine wine.
Mm. There's only a couple things in here that I bump up against, not the least of which is him hurling the little girl who manages to get up unharmed. I know I'm jumping way ahead, but I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't think I remember that, man. You know?
Some of the effects have not aged great, but for
Sure.
the most part, I think the movie on the whole, I think, has aged pretty well.
By the way, I'd forgotten the little fist pump he gives near the beginning of this movie.
Yes,
Totally forgot the little fist pump, man.
all of his little bits of humor that he adds to this, like I mean, are just it's hard to not look at that just like Wesley Snipes being Wesley Snipes, but it works because it's him.
Yeah.
If it was anybody else, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I agree. The little smile, and when Deacon Frost has the blood god thing happening, he turns around, he mouths the words "What the f," but he doesn't say it.
Yeah. Of course, his classic line from this franchise of so always some motherfucker that's trying to ski uphill or ice skate uphill. That's what it was.
Yes, that's it. I skate. Yeah, yeah. Good God, man.
Which he brings back in his Deadpool and Wolverine cameo, which is
That's right.
hilarious.
That's right. Yeah. Before we get into this here today, man, I'd like to think that there's a possible future for him because there's that clip that they didn't include that I wish they had where a portal, a portal's opening up. No, they did that for Gambit, didn't they? That was
Yes.
Gambit. Oh man. I still would like to see Blade at some point again. That'd be
Yeah.
fun.
Ryan has said multiple times now that he would like to see Blade get kind of like a Logan treatment where he gets one last movie and Wesley gets to play the character, and it's kind of the way to write him off and let him ride off into the sunset.
I think I'd be here for that.
Yeah, I'd love the idea of that. I don't know how far we are with the Blade movie that may or may not be happening with Marvel Studios. So we'll
Such a
see.
shame. It's such a shame. Ursula Ali is so effing wonderful. And didn't they ditch the script, the director, the creative team, and everything, and they're starting over from scratch? I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they are at this point, but it's definitely been through multiple scripts at this point. There's been a whole bunch of issues with the pre-production and everything, and so I don't know that this thing has actually started production yet.
Mm,
I'm not even sure who is the director on it at this point.
I I do not think it has. Honestly, I mean, when you can't even get out of the gates, man, that's kind of a big deal. And I mean, that's what we're talking about, man. Just can't even get out of the gates here with that. And I don't know. I just remember Mahershala Ali taking the stage. God, how long has it been since that happened? 3 years back now?
Yes, man, that was had to have been like 2020, 2021, almost 4 years.
Something like that. Yeah, dude. Yeah, I don't get it. I just don't. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, one thing's for sure: when it does hit, if it ever does hit, we're going to cover it. It's currently, by the way, scheduled to be released November 7th, 2025.
Okay, so it's gotta start production soon if it hasn't,
Yeah, like
because
now. Yeah.
that's coming up.
Yeah, it has to happen like now. Feige had officially announced the film. This was let's see, back in 2021, I think. And man, it has been that long. Stacy O.C. Kufur was hired to write the film, with Bassem Tariq hired to direct. by that September. Tariq left a year later due to the film's production shifts and creative differences. Jan Demange was set to direct in November 2022 when Michael Starberry was rewriting the script, while Nick Pizzolatto joined as another writer in April 2023. Michael Green was hired to write a new script by November. Demange exited the film by June 2024 when Pearson was writing the script. Filming is expected to take place in Mexico, the UK, and at Trilla Studios in Atlanta. Well, more to come on that. By the way, Phil, are you a vampire guy? Do you enjoy this kind of stuff apart from the comic book bit of it?
Yeah, I grew up like a big fan of horror movies and cheesy stuff. That speaking of, that's another New Line movie that pops up, Nightmare on Elm Street.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think of course depending on how it goes, but we've got varying degrees of vampires being in cool things like the I don't know what made me just think of the Leslie Nielsen vampire movie, which is which is great, or
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy, Vampire in Brooklyn,
Right.
classic cult film. Yeah, I like vampires. I guess that's my long answer.
I think vampires with James Woods, who, by the way, we don't have to talk about him anymore.
Someone to care for, to be there for. I have James Woods.
Yeah, it was funny. It's not funny anymore. Ooh, that guy, man.
Not nearly as funny, but
yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
But that movie, Phil, is effing great. I mean, I've always loved that flick with James Woods in it, man.
Yeah, James Woods is one of those guys that I try not to think about him as a person because he's been in many things that I like. I mean, one of my favorite movies ever that I watch every time I get a chance is Casino, and James Woods is great in it.
He is. Yeah, he's just kind of not the best human walking around. So,
I mean,
you know.
Also, a lot of roles he's in doesn't play the best person. So, maybe it carries over. I don't know.
I'm saying. Well, look, kids, if you're keeping up with your headlines, depending on when you are listening to this particular episode, we recently lost one of the stars of this film, Chris Christopherson, unfortunately, and that's really what prompted me to want to tackle this right now. I mean, also for the fact, as I said before, we had yet to do it. He was 88, and talk about a guy that had a big career, always outspoken. There's a great clip going around of him and I think they call him the original Outlaws or whatever it was. It was him and Cash and Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, and they're all like sitting around and he's completely anti-establishment. This guy, and it was like during the Bush first Bush years, and just anti-war and we shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, feel like he always seemed to be one of those guys that wasn't afraid to say what he was thinking. I think he always had the respect of his peers for that. And man, huge career, dude. I mean, he's music, movies, TV. This guy was a Renaissance man throughout his career, man. Just a shame we lost him.
Yeah. Of course, rest in peace to him. He is a big part of this movie. He adds a lot of the identity and kind of cool factor to this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's saying a lot when the leading man is Wesley Snipes. You're not going to outcool Wesley Snipes, but I do think that he brings something to the cast, and the movie wouldn't be what it is without him.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, Christopherson had Grammys. He had Academy. He was Academy Award nominated. The guy, again, kids, the guy did it all. So if you're of a certain age and maybe you're not sure who I'm talking about, do yourself a favor, go Google this guy. He's worth your time. He just seemed like an excellent human, especially compared to the dude we were just talking about. If I could be blunt, a good human walking around. I don't want to glaze over Snipes, Phil, because we have said multiple times. We've said it so much. Maybe I have. I've said it so much. I'm sure it drives people nuts now. But Iron Man doesn't work without Downey. The 78 Superman doesn't work without Christopher Reeve. I submit the 89 Batman doesn't work without Keaton. I mean,
Yeah.
Can we just be blunt here and say that this movie doesn't work without Snipes? It's not the same film with anybody else, is it?
No. Not only does it not work without Snipes, I do think that part of the era of making comic book movies lucrative again and having a star of Wesley Snipes' caliber on this film, and it was a success. I think it helped to make comic book movies not like this big joke to a lot of serious actors. And Wesley Snipes has had a incredible career. He's had very serious movies. He's had outlandish movies. Um, but the fact that he would be willing to take on a role like this and, you know, make it the success that he did off of him being a leading man, I do think that that helped the genre a lot, and I think that helped a lot of other actors look at this as something they could do.
Hmm. I agree with that. I agree with that. Is this his best role in your opinion? Do you think it is, or do you think there's a better movie out there that he did as a star?
It's tough because there's so many good Wesley Snipes movies. I mean,
Mhm.
I always think I immediately want to say Nino. I don't know if I would say New Jack
That's
City
fair.
is the
Yeah.
better movie, but
Yeah.
like it's definitely one of his most iconic roles. Of course, him in Demolition Man as well, also great.
Yeah. Major League, the Major League movie.
Yeah, which he's only in the first one, right?
Only in the first one they replaced him with Omar Epps. Omar Epps in the second one, I think.
Yeah, Wesley gave him the juice. Omar's got the juice
Yeah.
now.
Oh, I love Major League. Yeah, it's you're right. It's hard because he's done a mix of everything, man. You know what's cool is that like he was one of those guys, Phil. This is going back several years. Like I'm not paying taxes. Like remember, like there's this. I don't want to call them a wackadoodle group of people because hey, if you can stick it to the government and get away with it, more power to you. But
Yeah.
this group of people who claimed they found a loophole, so they didn't have to pay tax. And I think wasn't he found guilty if I'm remembering correctly of all that stuff? Because I seems like he was now.
Yeah, he had some legal trouble with back taxes a few years back, and that's part of why he uh, wasn't as visible for a while.
Hmm.
I don't know all the details. I don't have all of it in front of me, but it does seem like he did do some kind of jail time off of that, I believe. Um, but yeah, if there's anybody that's gonna come back for their money, it is the government. The government is never gonna forget, guys. At least you forget. You might be sitting at home like you're in the clear. The government is never gonna forget. They want their money. Let that be a lesson. People that took out PPP loans as well. Government is gonna come back for their money.
Yeah, in 2008, convicted on misdemeanor charges of willful failure to file federal income tax returns, sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. After an unsuccessful appeal, he served 28 months in federal prison, released in April 2013.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. There's some other stuff there too in terms of charges.
Oh yeah. He's got other uh other checkered things on his jacket.
Yeah, he does. But it's as a fan of his work anyway, it's cool that he seems to have had a little resurgence here. I don't know if it's going to lead to anything. By the way, I thought him in the Expendables was fun. I think he was just in one Expendables film, if I'm not mistaken, but that was a fun character too.
Yeah, he was fun in the Coming to America sequel as well. Um,
That's right. Yeah,
Not nearly as good as the original, but he's fun. He's a fun addition to that cast.
he is. And man, he's so cool in this movie. You've got the scene in the hospital where he's coming down the hallway like the Terminator in T2 in that slow motion walk with the long trench coat. I mean, to this day, Phil, his outfit, I think, is one of the best, the coolest looking outfits in any movie I've seen. He looks great, man.
Yeah, he's again he just brings this it factor to this role. He brings some coolness to this that wasn't there. There's so many things from that time period that um, are to me a part of fandom because of the Spider-Man animated series. Like I read comics coming into that time period, but that show did so much to get me more interested in other comics.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you about the Blade comics and if you really got into them.
Yeah, I didn't really read any of his comics, but um,
Mm.
he was always one of those characters. Every time he showed up on Spider-Man animated series, I was excited, and
Yeah.
so I think that was also part of why the movies resonated with me.
I got into the Blade stuff with the Midnight Suns when they brought that in. And it was him and Ghost Rider and Daredevil and Punisher, and
Mm-hmm.
there was somebody else I'm not thinking of. Can't remember
It's
now. It was a
strange.
nice, but maybe it was Strange. Yeah, it was a nice little run. But yeah, I enjoyed Blade there as well.
Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's main event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com.
First of all, man, because we're comic book guys, we got to give out shout outs to the creators, Marv Wolfman and Gene Colan. Legends, both these guys, absolute legends in the comic book industry. What a great idea, Phil. Like, and by the way, one of the few Marvel characters that Stan Lee's name is not attached to
Mm-hmm.
that, but man, what a great idea. Like, his mother is bitten as she's pregnant. And so she's still alive when her son is born. But again, he's born a Daywalker. Like, one of the coolest things ever. I mean, it's been done since then, I think, and other people have taken that cue, I guess, in other realms or whatever. But man, it's so awesome. I just think it makes total sense here too. I just love that twist.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Marv Wolfman, absolute legend, has created
Mhm,
some very notable characters. Of course, most people are going to know him for Teen Titans, Crisis on Infinite Earths,
mhm.
um, and a lot of characters he created from that era. I mean, Dick Grayson's a big one. Uh, Created like a bunch of characters from the initial run of Teen Titans that I'm sorry, did create the Dick Grayson, created the Nightwing identity for Dick Grayson.
Mhm.
But yeah, um, so yeah, he definitely deserves his flowers. I believe he's still with us, right?
Marv Wolfman is still with us. He's 78.
Glad he's still with us. Absolute legend.
Gene Colan, we did lose Gene Colan in 2011 at age 84.
Uh, Rest in peace to him. But yeah, I didn't read any of his Blade stuff, but I read a lot of his other stuff. I was a big fan of his Teen Titans for sure.
Yeah, landmark stuff, man. And we talked about the writer on this movie is David S. Goyer. Man, this guy.
It's been around the block.
Woo! I mean, let's see. The Blade trilogy, the Dark Knight trilogy, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and he's directed 4 films: Zigzag, Blade Trinity, The Invisible, and The Unborn. And he's the creator of the science fiction TV series Foundation. And he's co-writer on video games Call of Duty Black Ops, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. I mean, this guy could do a little bit of everything, man. Wow.
Yeah, what a career.
What a career. Man, yeah, we've mentioned his name multiple times here on the show. Well, look, I again, I just can't foresee this movie without Wesley Snipes, and I just I just honestly don't know if it works with anyone else in the role. But a little bit of background here for you kids. New World Pictures bought the rights to Marvel Comics. They were set to make a Mexico set Western starring Richard Roundtree as Blade.
Hmm.
Man, that's a different movie.
It's a very different movie.
Right?
Yeah, Richard Roundtree is a guy. He's another guy of his era, like Wesley Snipes is. That depending on the time you made that could have been huge.
Could have been, yeah. Shaft. Saying.
Yeah.
And Marvel then started to develop the film in early 92 when LL Cool J was interested in playing the lead role. I do remember that, by the way.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah. I don't remember how I because it was 92 and your options for comic book media weren't exactly huge. think Wizard magazine was a thing in '92, so I'm pretty sure that's
Yep.
probably where I read it.
Yeah, man. How much things have changed. Wizard used to be a giant in this industry.
I
The
loved it.
magazines, going to WizardCon, that was my first experiences going to conventions. Was going to WizardCon in Rosemont. I believe like they still have WizardCon here, but because they have the bigger one in the city, less people probably go to that one. But at least I stopped going because I was like, oh, this one's in the city. Cool. I don't have to go all the way to Rosemont.
Right.
It's a plus.
You're right. It was a powerhouse. It was a powerhouse.
Yeah.
There were other publications. There was Comic Scene. I had a subscription to Comic Scene. It was a full size magazine, and I remember I had a sub to that. But I had a sub to Wizard, and man, Wizard, like you said, was a powerhouse. But brother, when they left, they were done. Like it was all gone at one time. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's currently happening with some of the gamer stuff. Like Game Informer is gone. I
Yeah.
remember Game Pro folding, and just so many of those magazines that were a big part of our childhoods. They just don't exist anymore. It's starting to happen with the websites too. Like I know at one point, um, Newsarama used to be huge, and Newsarama at least doesn't exist in the form that it did.
Mm.
And there used to be, I mean, the Bendis board. I don't know if you were a Bendis boarder.
No.
Yeah, the Bendis at one point had his own forum. I guess for context, if you're not a comic book reader, I should step back and say that. Brian Michael Bendis is a pretty big name in comics. At one point, he had his own message board, and so it used to be a pretty big. Uh, There used to be a pretty big subsection of fandom on there because you could actually go on there at one point and it was a good mix of not just comic book fans but creators as well.
Bendis is a legend, man.
Yeah, which that I remember when the Bendis board went away. That was a very traumatic experience for a lot of us. But because it was such a way of life. I used to be a message boarder, which again, that just seems like a bygone era. 'Cause, either you're like a Twitter guy or a Discord guy or whatever now. Message boards they've gone the way of the dodo.
Yeah, it's amazing how things change online, man. Just go through phases of evolution or de-evolution, maybe. Maybe that's a better word.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There used to be a website that I got specifically all the movie stuff from. I think it was like comicbookmovie.com or something like that. I don't know
yeah,
if that still exists.
I did too. There was that and superherohype.com. That one might still be
Yeah.
going. Yeah, there's several out there going. Man, I used to live on the websites and in the actual publications just to stay up to date on all the news I could. Like I wanted to see the trailers ahead of time. I wanted to like now, Phil, this stuff is you can just stumble upon it and watch it all day long. But there was a time
Yeah.
you had to really hunt for it.
Yeah,
So,
it's the same with the way wrestling used to be, where wrestling um you have like your friends or your circle of people that you knew were wrestling fans, and it was seen as like this kind of underground thing that other people talked about, and then at one point it just blew up into this thing where everybody was talking about it. And comic books are kind of like that now. It's not really the genre of comic book movies, but it's especially just like just media outside the books, because I had that realization one day where I was like, oh, the movies are popular. People are still not going and buying the books though, which is unfortunate.
yeah, it's unfortunate. You're right.
I mean, well, it depends because I know the trades had a big boom at one period, and
Mhm.
they still do pretty well. But just that it takes a certain kind of fan that wants to go and buy floppies every week. Everybody's not going to do that.
Yeah. Remember when graphic novels were the rage, and then graphic novels,
Yeah.
still exist, but then trade paperbacks became the thing to get. Because man, in the long run, you save money.
Yes. Yeah, man. I mean, some of those graphic novels and like the big collections or the big omnibus, those were cool to have because they looked so cool on like a
Hmm.
shelf. But yeah, the trade paperbacks were just so much cheaper. Um, but again, that's another part of a bygone era. A big part of the boom period with the trades was Barnes and Nobles, and Barnes and Nobles are basically gone.
They are. God, man. I used to go there all. You know what I went to Barnes and Noble for the most part was discounted books,
Yes.
and I'd load up. And I also would go to the music section and look for the most obscure stuff I could find because as a jazz fan and blues fan, you had to talk about digging. You had to really dig to find that stuff. So I went so often, I had to force myself to stop going for like 2 weeks at a time so they could just get more stock in because that's how often I was going, man.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely at that time period when I started college, and I was reading a lot of comics when I started college because that's in that era where you have your own money and you can just, throw money into all of these hobbies that you probably shouldn't. And I bought a lot of comics during that time. I spent a lot of time in comic book stores. I spent a lot of
Hmm.
time sitting in Barnes and Nobles, either like reading through trade paperbacks or like collecting a bunch of them and like getting the time to read through them, which is another thing as an adult that makes me feel old now, where I just don't know when I had the time to read all of this stuff. But I used to read a ton of trade paperbacks, and now I cannot find the time to do that.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I just, when you get to be a certain age, the stereotypical thing to do is say, "Oh, I wish I could turn back time." Dude, I don't really care about the being younger bit, but just have time till you could just like as a kid when you just sit in the floor and read your comics, you know what I mean? Like, dude, that was everything in the world to me, man. I used to love doing that, man.
Yeah, I mean, I used to bring home a stack of floppies every Wednesday, and then I would have my trades that were reading too, and I would read all of this stuff and get through all
Mm.
of it, and within like weeks, and I don't know how I was doing that.
Yeah, same. Yeah, because like you said, now it's like, yeah, I don't know how in the world I'd even have time because there's no time. There's no time. Well, let me tell you this. We were talking about how this project kind of started. Well, from where it was, it ended up at New Line Cinema with David S. Goyer writing the script. And when he heard a film was in development, he went in to pitch with Ernest Dickerson. And David Fincher was also attached to the project and even worked on the script with Goyer. New Line Cinema originally wanted to do Blade as something that was almost a spoof.
Oh boy,
Yeah, before the writer convinced them otherwise. And at
come on,
one
get
point,
Leslie Nielsen.
yeah, right. By the way, we got to do the Naked Gun here sometime. That's a great freaking movie, man. This is interesting. At one point, the studio even asked if Blade could be white.
Oh no,
No.
oh, no, please no.
Knows the answer to that.
No.
Goyer wanted to take the characters seriously and ground them in a sense of reality with vampirism as a biological disease. He even pitched a trilogy of movies. And so, dude, right off the bat, man, this guy had a vision. He wanted to demystify the vampires and treat them as serious villains with a greater sense of realism instead of the doomed romantic characters shown in Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. And yeah, well, look, we know about Wesley Snipes, his history with comic book characters. This guy really wanted to be Black Panther, Phil. We've talked about that here on the show. Like, he very much wanted to be T'Challa. And when that did not come to pass, he signed on to star as Blade in '96 and brought his production company with him. So again, Phil, it just seems like things kind of fell into place at the right time for this movie.
Yeah,
So
I think it was the right time. I think they got the right guy to play them. He
yeah.
brought the right passion and conviction to the role. Um, and I just don't think that it would have worked nearly as well if it wasn't the right time and the right guy.
Well, I got two other names that is possible could make you think otherwise. So the head of New Line Cinema at the time suggested not only Snipes, but Lawrence Fishburne
Hmm.
and also Denzel.
I just think it's drastically different movies with those two guys.
Yeah, it is, but Denzel in '96, like his prime, like, oh my God, dude, what a movie. Like, I love Snipes, don't get me wrong. Man, oof,
I don't know if I could picture him doing the physicality. Like he started doing that later in his career with
that's
stuff like
true.
Book of Eli and of course Equalizer, but I don't know. At that time period, I don't know if I could picture him doing the same physicality that Wesley Snipes did.
Mm. Yeah, I mean that's fair. So we talked about Chris Christopherson being in this movie, and Chris Christopherson is Whistler. Yeah, Abraham Whistler. He is Blade's mentor, father figure, and weaponsmith. He's basically his Alfred, his microchip if you're a Punisher fan. He is his Q if you're a James Bond fan.
He's the
He's
guy in
the
the
guy
van.
in the chair if you're the Tom Holland Spider-Man fan. So yeah, dude. I love Whistler, Phil. I love this character. I love that he's cantankerous. And man, some of his lines of dialogue when he's talking to her could have been horrible. But right? But like, dude, when he delivers them, you're like, I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm not chuckling because he's just so good. Like, you kind of feel like you should be giggling. Dude, he's not. He just does a great job here, man. I loved him and I loved how different he was from Snipes. I thought it was the perfect combo.
Yeah, I just think that they have such a great dynamic, and he brings just such a different vibe to the Whistler character. Stick is another character that's very similar for different
Mm-hmm.
reasons, um, but he just brings this edge to the movie. I just think of him in all three movies and just how great he was in the role, and yeah, I just can't say enough about how this just wouldn't have been the same movie without him.
Oh, I agree. Sure. The line, by the way, one of the lines I'm thinking about here, vampire mace. And I'm thinking, what? Because I forgot that bit. And I wanted
Just
to smile, but when he kept talking, Phil, I'm like, oh my God, he's awesome because I'm not laughing at this.
yeah, just straightforward deadpan. Just yeah, here.
Great. By the way, I suggest you buy a gun. You start getting sensitive to daylight, find you're thirsty, regardless of how much you had to drink. I suggest you take that gun out, use it on yourself. And he just walks off, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't know that you could just do that, buddy. Like, but all right, cool.
Ooh. When that happened, I'm like, I know you got a bunch of guns up in here. Just give her a handgun. You know what I mean? Just give her one. But yeah, he's great here. The heavy. All right. Steven Dorff as Deacon Frost. By the way, Deacon Frost, one of the best comic book names of all time.
Mm-hmm.
Steven Dorff, one of the best looking dudes you'll ever see. A very good actor. Can do a little bit of everything. Phil, he's one of the coolest villains. And you know, we've talked a lot here about villains that go too far over the top. And you're like, okay, I don't believe this anymore because he's going too far. I don't think that Steven Dorff does that here, man. I think he's the perfect mix here of diabolical, but also smooth and cool. And yeah, what'd you think about him here as Deacon Frost?
I thought he was great. Very cool villain. Very he has a defined look, and again, you got to try to what's the word I'm looking for? You got to try to bring enough cool factor and bring enough presence to be a foil with Wesley Snipes. And I think he does a great job of not just holding his own against Wesley Snipes, but I think he ends up becoming one of the most memorable villains from this trilogy.
Oh, he's great. Yeah, he's absolutely great. He just has the look. I know it sounds weird. He has the look, he has the hair, he has the eyes. I mean, you know, villains are ugly, villains are hideous, villains are evil and mustache twirling. And this guy's none of those things, right? He's none of those things. He's, you know, and if, you know, you put him in another movie at this time, he's the hero, he's the star. He's just got movie star good looks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's always been one of the appeals of vampires is that as like an analog for like a devil or an evil character,
Mhm.
um, they've got to bring this presence. They've got to be, you know, very attractive. They've got to be very enticing and tempting in a lot of ways. And when you look at this guy, he fits the bill in all of those ways that you want a vampire to be. And so if you're gonna put a big heavy against this guy and have him you know, be alluring and cool and interesting in all these ways. He does it to a T. Um, he does several things against Blade them just kind of like, I mean, that just was cool when he in the final whack when they have their final fight and Blade cuts his arm off and he comes back and he regrows it back. Now again, the effects do not age well.
Right. That's
but,
true.
But the look on his face when he does it, just like, ha, you thought that was gonna work. So good.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of, I think he's a great villain for him too, because they are different enough. And you're like, you stand those two guys beside of each other, you're like, well, he's dead. He can't stand up to him. But man, they're on even playing field by the end of this movie, dude.
Yeah. A lot of what he does in this movie, he reminds me of Kevin Bacon so much. I don't know why. There's some of the mannerisms and everything. He reminds me a lot of Kevin Bacon.
And his dialogue is some of the best dialogue in the movie. I love when he's like with the elders, like because he's not an actual original born vampire. He was turned.
Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you.
When he's with like this high council of dudes, he just didn't understand, Phil. Why can't we just take them out? I don't get it. Like, what are we doing? And they're all like, well, there's rules. You know what I mean? We lay low. We blend in. We don't cause trouble. We work in the system. He's like, F that. It's like the voice of the youth, Phil, the voice of a youthful rebellion. He's like, these people are our food. And he says it like it's a menu. And I'm like, oh my God, that's freaking wonderful, dude. Again, everything he does in this movie works for me. I just think it's just the right casting. And I just think it works. But yeah, by the way, kids, if you're a Beatles fan, there's a great movie called Backbeat, which for me, it's the best Beatles film that I've seen to this point. And we'll see how the big budget stuff plays out, Phil, whenever that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But he plays Stuart Sutcliffe, who, if you're a Beatles fan, I was talking about the fifth Beatle. He was the fifth Beatle. So, yeah, excellent job in that movie, by the way. It's really good. It's a good watch. We've also got here as the damsel in distress, and Boucher Wright. And she is portraying Dr. Karen Jensen. Now, I'm not gonna, dump on her too much. But what I will say is, and I don't think it's on her. There's moments when I feel like the character maybe isn't fleshed out enough as it could be. But Phil, maybe I'm looking too much into it because it is an action flick. It's a comic book movie. We got to keep the story moving. I don't think she did anything that doesn't work. But there were moments when I'm like, I don't know if this is quite right. I don't know. And I don't know if I had that idea until like today watching the movie again. What did you think about her here as this? She's a hematologist in this movie. What did you think about her performance here?
I thought she was fine. I thought that she fit kind of the damsel in distress kind of Vicky Vale character in this movie.
Yeah.
She works as kind of the audience's eyes into this world, and like, you get all the exposition dumps and stuff with her, and we're supposed to be seeing all of this through her eyes, and I think it works. Do I think they could have done more to flesh her out as a character? Yeah, but I think she works for what she was supposed to do here.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think it's fine, but there's just moments when I just feel like, well, it could have been just a little bit better. And again, I don't know if that's through any fault of her own, to be honest with you. But yeah, I thought she does a serviceable enough job. I do like the idea, Phil, that we're going to ground this in the idea of, again, she's a hematologist and she approaches it from, okay, well, this is a blood disease. Like, basically take the fangs out, take the superpower healing out and all this wacky stuff that's happening. This is still a bloodborne pathogen, in other words. This is a blood disease. I'm going to treat it as such. And she actually keeps herself from turning throughout this entire movie, which is pretty darn impressive. You know what I mean? So I do like that they're trying to ground it in some weird way into the real world. I was here for that too.
Yeah, I like that, they brought her in, especially what we know about Blade, and she's the perfect person to work on a new serum for him. I thought that all of that stuff fit the storyline perfectly, and it fit the world building that Goyer was trying to build, with like the
Mm.
grounded characters, and seeing it as like a virus and not just like this horror movie trope.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was here for that. So we've also got, and if you know Tombstone, you'll get this reference. This is the Ike Clanton of this movie. Ike Clanton in Tombstone is that dude they just can't kill. Like no matter what happens, he's still alive in the end. By the way, spoiler alert. But like he's the biggest pain in the Earp side that ever, and he's a little squirmy little dude. Well, that's who we've got here in Donald Logue as Quinn, long before his days on Gotham, right? And this guy's done a little bit of everything in his career too, Phil. He's one of Frost's guys, young, just sort of, I don't want to say getting started, but probably about the same time, I would suspect. I think he crushes it here, man. I really enjoy him here. What did you think about him here as Quinn?
I thought it was great. I think you're right in that he's just this Weasley character, kind of like the Turk character that just keeps getting away and coming back. And his dynamic with Blade is very, very funny. Every time he keeps catching up with him, it's just still funny every time.
Yeah, it's good. Again, he just his mouth keeps getting him in trouble. But you had to have a character they could get beat up on, and like Blade torches him in the first like 2 minutes of the movie and everything, which is great. And I mean it's early on, put it that way, that he does it. But man, he just, they're healing and stuff, but man, you can't kill this guy until they finally kill him. I was kind of hoping he was going to be alive at the end, if I'm being honest with you. So I would have been okay with that. We're talking about the elders. We've got Udo Kier, I think is how you pronounce it, is Gitano. This guy, Gitano, I guess. This guy's been in everything, by the way. He's been in a lot of stuff. I think he was in something we reviewed before, if I'm not mistaken. He's done a lot. Man, his film career goes back to 1966. That's crazy. He was in Barbed Wire, The Adventures of Pinocchio. He was in Armageddon. Let's see. He was in End of Days, Shadow of the Vampire, another vampire movie. Yeah, All the Queen's Men, Revelation. Yeah, God, man, this guy, his career, freaking nuts. He just looks like a villain. He just looks like a bad guy. He's still with us, age 79. He's still going. But yeah, he's here. We also got Tracy Lord shows up as Raquel. She's in this flick. Seductive vampire who leads a man to the blood rave. That's Tracy Lord's near the beginning of the movie. The blood rave. Dude, Phil, I remember that moment when the blood starts coming down from the sprinklers. I remember that moment in the theater, and you could kind of hear people kind of gasp because you don't see it coming. Like, visually, Phil, we have to say, visually, this movie absolutely stands out. It's got its own style, yes. Right? I mean, the music, the techno that's happening in combination with the visuals of this film, I think it all works well together for this movie.
Yes, it feels very contemporary. It doesn't feel like a comic book movie at all, and I think that's part of why it works.
Yeah, that's true. Let's see. We've also got Sana Lathan. By the way, Phil, this twist, Blade's mother, Vanessa, this twist of her coming back at the end. When it first happened, I first saw this movie, I'm like, well, they've drugged him, right? It's not real. And it turns out, nope, it's real. And she's frozen in time because she doesn't age. I don't know. I wasn't anti this storyline, but I'm kind of like, did we need to see Blade kill his own mother? it's kind of a twist. What'd you think about this twist, man?
Yeah, I thought it was a good twist. Because I did not see it coming at the time. And Sanaa Lathan is great. She's been
Mhm.
great in most of the things she's been in. Very beautiful as always.
Oh yeah, big time.
But yeah, I thought I, it was one of those things where we've always kind of romanticized this relationship between him and his mother,
Mhm.
and you know, I don't think like especially when you see like his appearances in other medium that you think, oh well, he just had like this like star-crossed relationship with his mother where they were just doomed to be apart for all this time, and they probably just didn't cross paths again. He probably just went on with his life.
Mhm.
But they just like, no, he just killed her. Okay, cool.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of, well, he can't bring himself to do it. Oh no, he's gonna do it. Oh, okay. Yeah. By the way, this was only her second movie. Her first movie was in '97. Drive was her first role.
Oh
So
wow, I
yeah.
didn't know that was her second movie. I know she had done some TV and stuff before that. Of course, she went on and had a incredible career after that.
Well, Life came out in '99, which makes me feel older than I thought it would. She's in Life. And see, The Best Man came out in '99. Also, The Wood came out in '99. My God, I'm old. Love and Basketball 2000. Alien versus Predator in 2004. Yeah, man, she's done some stuff.
Yeah, she had a pretty big run towards the end of the '90s of movies. But yeah, I didn't even realize that was just the second one. I just
Yeah,
assumed that it was a part of that run of movies, but I guess it kind of was.
she's done a
Wow.
lot of TV. She does voice work as Donna Tubbs in The Cleveland Show and Family Guy.
Yes. She's done cameos in like a bunch of like well-known sitcoms. She has a cameo in Family Matters, if I remember correctly. I believe she has a cameo in Fresh Prince as well.
Mhm. Let's see, Arlie Jover as Mercury. She's the blonde with the skimpy dress on. That's one of Frost's girls, I guess. She's here as well. Kevin Patrick Walls as Officer Krieger. He's a familiar, the little Weasley little cop that's in this. Tim Geeney as Dr. Curtis Webb, Karen's ex-boyfriend who's killed by Quinn and later becomes a zombie-like creature. Man, when they throw her in that pit and he's down there like a zombified dude, that's some scary stuff, man. He's absolutely terrifying down there.
Yeah.
Ooh, he had that voice. I'm like, that's not him. And I'm like, oh my God, it's him. Like, I had no idea he was still around. What do you think about Pearl, by the way? Look, this is a comic book film. At least we forget. Pearl, Phil, this weighs like 1,000 pounds. And like the records keeper, I guess, for the vampires. Was that too far over the top for you? Was it okay? What I mean, it's shocking when you see it. Like, what'd you think about that?
I thought it was fine. It didn't really bother me. uh, it is very over the top.
It is. Yeah. When I saw it, I'm like, it's a comic movie. It's fine. I don't care. Yeah. Well, look, kids, again, like grounded reality, all you want to cast the best cast ever. It's still comic book material. It's okay. It has permission to still be a comic book film.
Yes.
So yeah. We've often done films where we've done the first one and not done any more. I have no desire to do Blade Trinity. I'm not opposed to doing Blade 2,
Oh,
but
Blade 2 is great. Very
yeah,
good
I'm
movie.
not opposed to that at all. But Blade Trinity,
Yeah. Yeah. Not the best
yeah. But well, look, I desperately want to see Mahershala Ali play Blade. And I think there's, Phil, I think you and I have talked, I'm sure everybody else talked about it too. The idea of, well, Wesley Snipes could be Whistler. Do you think that would make sense? Like give him a long beard, like some hair or whatever, and just, he's the older guy and he's the weapons maker or whatever. I mean, do you think that works? Is that too on the nose? I mean, you at least give the guy a cameo, right? How would you handle that if it were you?
I think that there's a way you can do it, but I don't know that you need to do the Whistler route. I mean, now that the idea is on the table, it's hard to say no to just letting him have his final movie and letting him ride off into the sunset.
Mm.
I don't know. It's a tough one, man.
It is. Yeah. Well, I'd like to see it happen, but I don't know. Again, we don't even know it. I mean, November, look, November 2025 is coming quick, dude.
It's almost a year away.
It's almost a year away. And I have heard of no forward movement on the production at all. So I don't have any idea what's even happening at this moment. Like,
Maybe Wesley, he cursed this movie like Seeley. It's
I'm
like, man, till you do right by me, nothing you ever try to do with this movie is ever gonna work.
just saying, anything's possible. Yeah. Well, look, I don't think we can overstate the importance of this film, Phil. Had this film, I don't know, man, had this film not worked, we always go down that road of what happens if something doesn't work. You know, for Marvel, Phil, it took a while to get out of the gates, man. We got X-Men, we got Blade, we got the first Spider-Man movie. Things started just, blowing up from there. But again, man, if you're a younger dude, you may not know. Once upon a time, we didn't have anything. Like there was nothing. You had Batman '89, and that was kind of it. And you had random comic book projects that weren't considered the big heroes from the two big companies. They were just random stuff, which is fine. But man, Blade, ooh, this just did more for Marvel as a brand, I think, than anything else, man, at the time. And I think without the success of this movie, we don't get the Marvel Universe later on.
No, we don't. I think it's Michael J. White that was on something where he was saying, they have to give him his flowers because uh, Marvel Studios is really the house that Blade built, and he's got a point. I think that Blade and the Fox Marvel movies, definitely Sony Spider Man, if those things aren't a huge success, then Marvel Studios isn't nearly as successful. But I think there's also something special about Blade succeeding in the way that it did because um, I would gather a lot of people didn't know right away there was a comic book movie. They probably
Hmm.
didn't know that there were comics for it. Um, but that just also speaks to just like this movie and what it did for comic book movies at the time because it's different if there's like a flagship property like Spider-Man or X-Men doing well because those are like big names. Blade is kind of an obscure character for a lot of people. So it definitely opened that door for a lot of other comic book movies that were based around like D-list or smaller characters.
Yeah, that's fair. Kind of like the first Iron Man movie, right? Where it's just,
Yeah.
not considered one of the big heroes. It's not a Spider Man. It's not a Hulk. It's, Iron Man. But then look what they did with it.
Just imagine telling somebody that. I remember having that conversation with somebody where I was saying, man, there was a time period where Iron Man is a D-list character. And I had an argument with this guy because he was like, he was never D-list. Yes, he was.
Of
He
course
was
he was. Yeah.
he was not he was not a main level character. The Avengers weren't the franchise that they are now in the comics. They weren't flagship characters. It was X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man.
Yeah. Like Avengers existed for a good long time and a huge collection of characters and heroes and whatnot. But yeah, you're right. I don't think they didn't have the reputation they have now thanks to the MCU.
Yeah. Now Iron Man is basically MCU Mickey Mouse.
Ah, that's good. Yeah, man. I'll take that. By the way, we've talked a little bit about the plot here. What do you think about this whole blood god thing? Is this just like are we disappointed we didn't actually see this guy? You know what I mean? Like is it the skeletons flying around and all that stuff? Is it a little too hokey for you? What do you think about the grand plot here for the bad guy?
I didn't mind it. I think because the ultimate fight that we get with him and Blade is so good that I thought it was cool. I
Hmm.
don't and it could be nostalgia. When I saw it, I was like, this is all very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the basically the point of this Phil is to get them to that big major fight in the third act. That's the whole point of this.
Which is just man, there's so many things in this movie that are memorable. Like I said, the opening scene, going to the rave, and the shower of blood and everything. Um, some of the fight scenes, but that fight scene of him um, coming out and when he's had to he's had to feed for the first time and drink blood, and then he comes out there running with the vest on, and he jumps off of the platform and flips down and does a superhero pose.
Yeah.
Classic.
He was doing the Black Widow landing before Black Widow ever did it, by the way. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? Like the sword at the rave when he takes the sword and draws that line on the floor with it, does that half circle. That's a great move. Again, he looks freaking awesome. I think the fight choreography is fantastic, by the way. I'm really here for it. Yeah, I was here for that for sure. Let's see. As far as some trivia goes, this is good. The character Whistler was created for Blade's cameo on Spider-Man, the animated series in 1994. He was liked so much by Marvel CEO that he was adopted into the Marvel Universe. I thought Whistler came first from Tomb of Dracula, but I was wrong.
I did not know that, but I didn't read the Blade comics growing up. So my introduction to the character was from the animated series. So that kind of links me in. So because like I said, I didn't know any of this.
Yeah. A conversation apparently that was deleted from the script explained how Blade's sword originally belonged to Whistler, who himself was part of a long line of vampire hunters. To me, that's something you leave in. I think that's beautiful. I think that just makes so much sense. I'm here for that. So when they make choices, man, sometimes I don't get it. We're talking about Donald Logue and his character Quinn. Supposedly he was so funny on the set that his character was expanded. He was allowed to ad-lib a good portion of his dialogue. They just loved him. He's great. He's so good at it, man. You just hate the guy so much.
That tracks.
Yeah, for sure. Stephen Norrington, by the way, the guy that directed this film, usually we'll talk about these big budget, or movies that just hit it huge, whether it's comic book or sci-fi or whatever it is. And we'll talk about the director, and he went on to have this huge career. Well, not exactly. Stephen Norrington directed 4 movies. That was it. Death Machine, Blade, The Last Minute, and The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and that's it.
Oh boy, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is it's a touchy subject for a lot of people, including Alan Moore, who was not a fan of that movie at all.
Oh no, Alan Moore's not a fan of a lot of stuff. But no, I get it. Yeah, he's we talked about him before here too. By the way, I didn't know this. There was a deleted scene from this movie. Michael Morbius is in the deleted scene, and it's the director of the movie in the role.
Oh, I did not know that.
I did not know that. Now I got to find that deleted scene. I'm going to definitely find that deleted scene. But
touchy subject as well. Another.
Yes. So this guy, this director, got his work. First worked in film as a special effects artist, and he worked on Aliens and Split Second, and then went from that to a director. It seems like a big jump. Not that he didn't, do what he had to do, or paid his dues or whatnot. And supposedly he was going to get the Crow reboot in 2008, and then that didn't come to pass. So I just found it interesting. There wasn't a whole lot of anything happening from this director after this. Again, just 4 films. It is what it is. Well, look, I enjoyed Blade in Deadpool and Wolverine. I thought it was excellent. I think Wesley Snipes is awesome. This is one of those movies where I feel like I could just watch. It's the right mix of grotesque. Like some of the blood is a little off-putting. Some of the effects are a little bit too nutty and they don't hold up. But a lot of the real world stuff still looks really good and holds up. The music's good. The vibe, as we said, the sensibility, the style of the film is all there. The cast is excellent. I don't see a lot of bad thing about this, man. I mean, what would you hope to see from Mahershala Ali as Blade? What ground would you like to see covered? What would you like to see? Anything from the comics that you like to see played out, or what would be your hopes for that if and when it gets off the ground?
I think if they make it, I think that they should make it contemporary. I think a good part of this era of comic book movies has been creating legacies. I know at one point they wanted to bring in like Blade's daughter and idea of the Daywalker and like trying to um, break chains and like start another generation. And I think that's a good way to come back and do something different than the Wesley Snipes movies.
Mm.
I mean, 'cause even if you're not going to go the route and like bring in a different Whistler, but like also like the idea of Blade having like uh this whole new generation of fans and also um being in a mentor role for somebody else because we haven't seen that in the movies.
That's true. Yeah. Here's a question. I don't know what the answer is. I wonder what's preventing Marvel from doing a Midnight Suns sort of subgenre of the MCU, like whether it's streaming on Disney Plus or it's actual movies or even animated. I wonder if that's been a discussion. You'd think it has to be by this point.
Yeah, I'm tempted to say that I think that Blade would work better as a Disney Plus show as well, but once you get a name like Mahershala Ali on it, I don't think that you settle for just a TV show.
Yeah, that's fair. That's
But I
fair.
think that it could be a great TV show. I think if you give it, 13 episodes and just have him like solving different um, mysteries every episode, and then have it leading up to like an overarching thing. Um, if it's similar to those Netflix Marvel shows, I think it'd be very good.
Yeah, I agree. We have got some stuff in the animated series with this character with Blade. And, we also have to talk about, we haven't mentioned the series at all. Sticky Fingers as title character. And
I've never seen any of it. That's why.
really? All right. So look, I can't sit here and say I binged the whole thing. There's only 13 episodes and there's only one season. But I can tell you I've seen some of it. I just don't have a lot of recollection of it. This came out actually in 2006. It's not all that old. It makes me want to go back and find it now. I'm sure it's somewhere. You could probably find it somewhere, but I'd be curious to see. It got mixed reviews, by the way, kids, in case you're wondering. Critics praise the action scenes while criticizing a large number of cliches, as well as the absence of Wesley Snipes. It's a TV show.
Yeah, you're not gonna get Wesley.
No, there wasn't a lot of bouncing around then. There is now, but there wasn't then. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's something to go look up. But
Yeah.
well, look, as I said, I hope the Mahershala Ali project happens. I love that guy, and I think he would make a fantastic Blade. And we've all been wanting that for a while, and hopefully it does come to pass because I'm here for it. Well, Phil, before we get out of here for this episode, let me get your last word on this movie, on Blade.
Iconic movie. Definitely have a cult following, well-deserved cult following. Really good popcorn movie. I think it has aged very, very well in terms of like the action. Um, Wesley Snipes is still a fantastic leading man at that point in his career. Um, some of the, like I said, some of the effects don't age as well, but I think you can look past that because there's so much more to like about this movie.
Yeah, I can't disagree. I mean, it's I enjoy this flick. I think it's aged pretty well, and for all the reasons that we talked about on this show and more. Like if you're a comic book fan, it's definitely worth your time, and it's definitely worth a rewatch if you haven't seen it in a bit. And again, I hope it does get its flowers, and I hope that Snipes gets his flowers if he hasn't yet. Because again, I say without this movie, we don't get what we know today as the MCU, and that's a big statement to make. But man, it's 100% true. So we will see what the future holds, kids. You can be guaranteed if the remake does happen, or if the reboot or whatever we're calling it, if the new movie does happen, we're definitely going to cover it here. And I can't wait to see what that'll look like, how to play out. But again, we'll be here for it. But for now, that is Blade.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.